We're a wholesale production-oriented organic berry farm in Vermont.
Today's episode comes to you from Charlotte, Vermont, where we visit with Adam Hausmann and Jessica Sanford of Adam's Berry Farm. Today's visit is part 2. The previous episode was a farm tour and a field walk through the berry plants and high tunnels and the barn. This episode shares the growing practices, farming history, and steps to the development of this farm business. I'm your host, Andy Chamberlain, and I take you behind the scenes with growers who share their strategy for achieving the triple bottom line of sustainability. These interviews unravel how they're building their businesses to balance success across people, profits, and our planet. If this show has impacted you, I'd love to hear it via email or publicly as a review in the podcast app. The Farmer's Share is supported by the Vermont Vegetable and Berry Growers Association and the Ag Engineering Program of the University of Vermont Extension. If you enjoy this show and want to help support its programming, you can make a one-time or reoccurring donation on our website by visiting thefarmershare.com/support.
So I'm Adam Hausmann and operate Adam's Berry Farm with my partner Jessica Sanford. Certified organic, real organic, diversified berry farm that is production oriented with the goal of feeding our community with delicious, nutritious berries. The farm was started in 2001. I used to live down in the mountains in Lincoln, and initially I was working at a different farm and had put in, I was kind of, going in the direction of wanting my own operation for various reasons. And I experimented with, garlic and, some other things kind of up in the mountains, and then eventually settled on berries for a number of reasons. I guess, some of it was market gaps at that point. Some of it was, there were a lot of people growing berries conventionally, but very few people that were really concentrating on organic berries, or they, maybe a vegetable farm had a little bit of strawberries, a little bit of raspberries or something like that, but there wasn't a true focus. And so it seemed like there was an opening there. And then, it was also just an overall, interest in perennials and interest, just a general interest where I wasn't growing cabbage for life wasn't going to excite me. And it just didn't do it for me. Whereas the fruit really excited me and the perennials really excited me. So started in Lincoln, and then was, for various reasons, was moving out of Lincoln. And I had a good friend, Abby Nelson, who worked for, NOFA, I guess at that point, suggested looking down at the Intervale for land. I'd been looking at land off and on for a little while, and I was, at this point where I would find land, but then I couldn't figure out how, I could afford the land, but it didn't have a house on it, and I was and I couldn't figure out how to get established without, massive debt, really, and it was, it was a hindrance on on moving forward, I guess. And so Abby suggested looking down at the Intervale. I knew very little about the Intervale at that point. I knew they did this fall fair where they had this bike powered Ferris wheel or something like that. And that was about my knowledge on the Intervale, and it was where Gardener's Supply was. That was kind of what I knew. And I went down there and, had my kind of tour and, I guess some brief interviews, and then within probably 2 or 3 weeks I had submitted a business plan and gone through the application process and signed a lease. And so that was 2002, and I started leasing 10 acres down there, and it was a great place to land, and it was a great place where I don't think I think I said it outside, but I'm not sure I would have been farming still if I hadn't ended up down at the Intervale, where I'm not sure I would have made it, honestly. And it was a great way working for other people is wonderful as far as making mistakes and learning as well, but also having some of the support of the Intervale. At that point, there was a lot more, it was a true incubator program. There was a lot more of business planning advice that was built into kind of the program, and a little more guidance. But then the real benefit was also just being surrounded by a collection of other growers down there, and the community that it provided. And everyone was, busy and doing their own thing and had their own businesses, but it was still, it kept you motivated. It kept you, I'd look out and Arethusa would be, they were across the road from us, and Half Pint and all these other farms that were around ICF, of course, and Diggers. And it, when you were leaving late at night and there were still people down there, it felt good. You're like, okay, I'm not the only crazy one that's still out here or pushing it myself. And, the other thing that was really valuable about being down there and getting established was just the exchange of information that happened. Whereas if you had a problem with, a pest or disease, within a day, you could usually find someone that had experience with that and knew how to manage it, or could point you in the right direction. And same goes with just easy, the proximity to UVM and people like Ann Hazelrigg, and you had a lot of kind of community support there. And so for us, while we were down there, it allowed us to get established with really minimal debt, but it allowed us, probably more importantly, to establish connections in a community and connections with it, as far as even like a brand as far as a farm goes, where we started to really get to know all the restaurants and all the chefs. And, you follow chefs around as, restaurants come and go, but the chefs stay in the community. And so, you really develop those relationships, and, you developed your relationships with different buyers at, the co-ops and the natural health food stores around. And they probably pushed me along just as much as, as kind of our own internal push that was happening. But as far as quality and consistency, I give like Mary, who was at City Market forever as their buyer, a tremendous amount of credit on. She, initially we weren't certified organic. We're doing everything organically, but I wasn't certified. And she pushed me to get certified. And then she pushed me on quality and consistency and all these things that just made me a better grower, but also a better kind of, just as far as just sales and relationships within the community. It made me, made the business stronger. So we were there for, I think about a decade. And we flirted with leaving a couple times due to flooding, due to, just personal things going on. We're just kind of wanting change, all these different things where, but we were there for about a decade. And then, eventually when I truly realized, I was like, okay, I want to keep on going and stick with this operation. And I guess more actively started looking at land again. And that was after, pre-Irene, but, after many floods. And so we ended up where we are through kind of the working with a gentleman that is in this area that owns a lot of land and a lot of farmland and is very supportive of different farmers here. And then also connecting with the Vermont Land Trust and the Farmland Access Program. And that was huge in our transition, finding land that we wanted to stay within Chittenden County and the Burlington area just because our markets were established there. And I didn't want to I didn't want to move up to the Kingdom or something like that and be driving everywhere and, and have almost feeling like I'd have to start over as far as the market side of things. By the time we moved here, we had pretty strong connections within the community and the markets and farmers markets. And so, I wanted to be in kind of striking distance of Burlington. And the challenge with that is affordability of land, and land access and affordability is, it's a challenge all the time, but for a grower, that's big. And the Farmland Access Program made it so that we could afford this land, cut the land price in half, and allowed us to, kind of transition here, still make investments in the property, and kind of grow and get reestablished here. And it, now we're, a decade into being here, and it's home. This is it. This is like the other. I always say I felt like I truly became a farmer or grower when we moved to this property, where I was forced to manage in a whole different level as far as the property and think about the farmscape in a different way. Whereas at the Intervale, I rented the land, I went down there, I worked the land, I went home, you went home, and there's a beauty to that. Your brain turned off in a different way that like your brain does not turn off. And I look out from here and I can see our high tunnels, and I can see the fields, I can see storms rolling in, whatever it is, so it's, you're always thinking about the farm here, but it's also that connections. I love the connection and the life that comes with that as well. So yeah, so that's a little bit of, I guess our history, and then, as far as that's like the farm history, and then I don't know if Jess wants to touch on anything as well on that.
How was it renting land when you were establishing blueberry plants? Like, that seems like a very permanent thing. Yeah. And I wouldn't think they would like want to rent land to something like that.
At that point, there were a number of growers, including self, that were grandfathered into the Intervale. So I had the security. If I wanted to stay there, I could have stayed there. I could still be there. And so when I kind of embarked on the establishment, I knew that as long as I want to be here, this is an option. So it made me
committed,
willing to take the risk. If I knew it kind of evolved from there to more of like a loose 3 to 5 year lease, I think, was the incubator program. And then it seems like now mostly everyone is there, kind of grandfathered back in again. But if I had known, okay, I only have 5 years here, obviously it wouldn't have been an option. I mean, I guess it could have been an option, but it would have been a crazy option to do. And I guess where, going, like, starting off down there, you had access, when I started, you had access to equipment. So there were implements, things like that, where I had my own tractor. I had some degree of kind of independence that way, but, you'd access to plows, discs, whatever, cultivators, whatever you might need. You had access to storage, walk-in coolers, all of these major, ticket items that really can set you back as a young grower, and that you just never come out of that hole of, like, the financial hole of trying to invest in a walk-in, and you think about all the, like, implements that you use and need, and you maybe only use them once or twice a year, but they're so valuable to you.
Were all those wrapped up in your rent, like included?
They were at that point wrapped up in the rent, and then at some point it shifted where there was kind of an equipment co-op that was separated from the Intervale Center at that point, and you at that point had to buy into it, and I elected not to buy into it, actually, because I realized that for the cost of buying into it and renting the equipment, I could, for what I needed, I could invest in those implements, and not be like, okay, I can use this, disc at 3:15 on Thursday, and I have it for 2 hours, and for me, like, I want it, like, I have, first of all, it's weather, it's like you're a grower, it's like when the time is right, you have to pounce, and then secondly, just wanting the ability of, like, I want to do this now, I want to get this done, and I want to get the plants in the ground, or whatever, the cover crop, or so I wanted that flexibility, and a lot of the equipment too, I feel like sometimes it's always been like, there's a lot of, like, the veggie equipment that's out there, and, it's throughout Vermont. There's a lot of veggie equipment. Same goes down at the Intervale, where it wasn't necessarily the same equipment that I needed to. So it was easier for me to make that investment. But yes, initially you had access to everything, which was a big deal on, when we first got down to the Intervale, I planted strawberries, fall raspberries the first year, and I put in 3,000 blueberry bushes that first year. And so that, initially it was just maintaining, and I had to, that like fall, I had a light fall raspberry crop. They tasted great. They were autumn bliss was that variety. It's a really nice variety. But that was kind of the first crop, and the next year had strawberries, fall raspberries, and a very light harvest of blueberries, and then it kind of just grew from there, really, and it allowed us, initially, I thought I was going to do more pick your own than wholesale. I think when I established, but I realized fairly quickly that we weren't getting the volume that we needed. You had to market yourself. You had to put yourself out there. There were other places that were established, various factors where we weren't getting all of the fruit off the bushes that needed to come off to make it work. And so, I think my second year I had one employee, and then third year, had 2 employees. And then, by fourth year, I think I had 4 people, and kind of stayed pretty bare bones when I was down there as far as employees go. I think, maybe maximum was maybe 6 people down there. And a lot of that was so that we could maintain the harvest. We started to enter into the wholesale market more for restaurants and markets, and then also started attending the Burlington Farmers Market, which was a really great way to have a retail sales outlet in Burlington, and a strong market, and a strong way to also just make connections with the community and kind of advertise the pick your own, and that side of it, just kind of get word out. We're here, and we're here, and we're open. So the Intervale was a great place for us to get established. It truly was, and I'm incredibly grateful for the time down there. But we started to outgrow it for be it land mass, flooding, high tunnels were a big thing. We were in there's designated flood zones of where you could have structures and where you could not. We had a couple of high tunnels down there, some old hay groves that we got through VHCB, and they were technically grandfathered in, because if it flooded, those 64 posts were going to raise the flood level up that much further, which was totally insanity, but it was what we were told. And so we couldn't put up any more high tunnels. And we, at that point, the things were shifting climatically. I mean, things were getting earlier and earlier, but we were also seeing the extremes in both temperature and moisture happening, or drought year, flood year, drought year, flood year. And we were trying to make investments that could give us security. And high tunnels at that point were a big thing for us. We were starting to grow strawberries in high tunnels then, and June strawberries. But we wanted to shift some raspberries into them as well. And we felt like we couldn't adopt climate change the way we wanted to down there. And then also just didn't have the land mass that we needed. So that kind of sparked the third move. So,
this is kind of a 2-part question. First part is, what did you envision your farm would look like when you got started? We'll say maybe when you made the decision to get on this land. Did you envision it being the way it is now?
This existing property?
Yeah, here.
Yeah. I would say I had the same problem that a lot of farmers have. I wanted to do everything, type of thing, where I was like, it was winter. I got really excited. First of all, I was like, so you have time.
You went to a conference.
Yeah, I went to a conference. Yeah, exactly. So I was like, we're going to do every type of fruit, I think, when we moved here. So we moved here, we put in, we had the berries, we had the raspberries. We shifted away from a lot of fall raspberries to summer raspberries, because spotted wing was also introduced, right? It kind of, the really 2011, 2012 was when it really started to get established, and people were just disking under their fall raspberries and getting out. And we scaled back because we weren't quite sure how to handle SWD at that point. But we put in
currants, gooseberries, peaches, plums, cherries, pears.
Yeah,
I
everything.
don't have any of them. Persimmon.
Persimmon, quince. Yeah. Yes. I got excited.
Hey,
to say the least.
Throw it all into the field and see what grows, right?
Like we're gonna have a little bit of everything, and we're gonna figure out what, the thought was like, we'd be true, like, it's like berry and fruit farm, and that we wanted to do it all organically. So we had a lot of different varieties as well. We're trying to figure out what varieties worked better organically, which didn't. And then our thought was that with the fruit that was blemished or, cosmetically not perfect for direct sales, that we could do more value addeds, make popsicles, freeze it, whatever it might be, figure out kind of an outlet for it as well. And I think fairly quickly we realized that we just couldn't manage the harvest, but also the crops. And so we first to leave, the cherries left first, then the peaches, they became blueberries, that's where the Draper blueberry field is. And then we kept the plums and the, pears, and the plums still is excited. I still am excited. I'm excitable on things like that. But they, again, we just weren't managing them properly, especially organically. And they flower very early, beautiful flowers. But they get hit by frost or, whatever it was. It just, we weren't taking care of them the way they needed to be, and it was tying up a lot of land, which became valuable. So we ripped those out, and those are cargo blueberries now. And then pears we held on to because organically they have the most potential, and also they can be stored for a long period, and we don't grow anything that can be stored for a long period. Everything we have is highly perishable, and so that was kind of attractive. I was like, we can load up the walk-in and sell these slowly.
Then we wanted to do pear cider and pear brandy. A lot was tied up into the pears.
Yeah, too much. And last year we dug them all up and sold them.
I think we looked at it as like, okay, if that acre was planted in blueberries, and we know we can get X amount of money in return, whereas we're not making anything right now off the pears. It's just tying up land, and we're desperately hoping that something happens with them or will happen with them.
Yeah, I looked at, I was like, okay, I forget how many pear trees we had, but, I don't know, 120 pear trees, they're coming into production. Some years they were great. Some years they were pretty bad, for lack of better description. But then I looked at that, in our return versus, I'm like, we could fit, 1,600, 1,800 blueberry bushes there. And you start to do the numbers, and it was like, it was a no-brainer. They were gone, so they left, we sold them, and, it was great to see them go to new homes. But their land's free, and, it just opened up a new field basically for us, and a field that our systems were already set up on harvesting them and harvesting berries and maintaining them, and, as far as the fertilization, spraying, whatever it might be, it's just like it was almost easier to just expand our acreage in that manner and tie it in to our existing systems than manage a whole different crop. So, so that was kind of crop wise, I think, what we envisioned. And then, pick your own focused, and creating kind of a destination, I think, was still important to us, and wanting to bring, I guess we always liked bringing people together around food, and just like the simplicity of food and berries, and how, we have families that have been coming out for, since their kids were little or since they're pregnant, and they're still coming. And it's the, people tell me it's like the one thing that they can agree on as a family to do together still, and they still have fun together, and I love that. Or older couples that have been coming out forever, and it's just their time together. And so we wanted to create kind of this open farm that way where people could come and pick and relax and feel at ease and welcome at all times, and that was really important. But at the same time, there was like the face of the farm, which is I feel like the pick your own side of our farm, where it's the very public side of it. But then the reality was our direction was going wholesale, and our market was going into a wholesale market. And so I think when we moved here, we knew that we still had this public face, and we needed that and wanted that. But the bread and butter of our farm was becoming a wholesale farm, where we were becoming really the main berry supplier for the markets and restaurants around here, and the farm that could offer the quality and the consistency, which is a big thing, I think. And as the manager of the farm as well, it was something I really liked too, and that I could plan. I knew how much we were going to sell wholesale, and I could project in a very stable and conservative way. Like pick your own, it's like you open up and you're like, I wonder if anybody's going to show up today. And it's like, and then it's like, like during strawberry season, let's say, it was like, for a while we're having these like heat spikes where it was like 90 for 5 days or something like that. Nobody wants to pick berries when it's that hot. And then it throws off all your plans too, where it's like you have early, mid, and late season varieties. But, when you have these heat spikes, it doesn't matter. All your plannings, goes to the wind, where everything just comes on at once. And so there's that side of it, and we're seeing it more midsummer, where just the heat spikes, where it's like you're busy in the morning, and then it's crickets in the afternoon, because it's, who wants to stand, if it's choice, who wants to stand out in the middle of a hot, sunny field when it's 90 something degrees? So we're just found for us that, as far as like the stability of our business and planning of our business, that the wholesale gave us more stability, and the pick your own was like a great bonus, really. And it's variable year to year too, as far as income also. So we de-emphasized that side of our business, where it's still like a vital part of our business. And so I always say it brings the joy to the farm. But it's not what supports us. It's not our bread and butter at all. That's for sure. And that's become more so as, we've settled here and grown. Even after COVID and like not having people here for a year, I was like, oh, this is nice. You can go swimming in the afternoon. Like you can, it's like you had flexibility in your day. Like you can get up early, you can still put in 10 hours, but have time. And versus like we're open until the end of the day type of thing. And it's, it just it simplified our life and added another layer. And I wrestled with like, do we go even towards just total wholesale farm? But I think
pick your own is, it's operating an on-farm event every day. The farm has to look nice. Everything has to be in place. It's a lot more like land management, people management, to uphold that part of the business. So I think Adam appreciated not having that part of the business during COVID to focus on some other aspects of the farm.
Yeah, and we were also doing that, that blueberry expansion and all these things at that point. So I was excited about that, and that's what I wanted to do. And
it allowed you to focus on kind of turning a chapter and bigger opportunities. Because like you said, you can only have so many people in this area, like come to your farm. Like you could market all you want, but there's more opportunity in wholesale and more guaranteed. Like you said, you could project that.
Yeah. It gave us, not having pick your own that year, gave us a lot more flexibility as a family to go to ice cream at the end of the day, or not be bound to the farm as much. So
this is what people do in the summer, like there's type of feeling.
You got a taste of freedom.
Yeah. You don't want too much of a taste. It's dangerous.
But it's back, and we're gonna hang on to pick your own.
It is back. It is back.
And we love it. And I think, staff that works here love it. I think they really get to see why we do what we do and that people appreciate what we're doing. And I think a big part of why we continue to do what we do is like really wanting to connect people to their food source, and berries are an easy way to do that. No one's coming out to pick cabbage. So we have a beautiful spot. We have a product that lends itself to, that people want to come out and pick. So I think that's an important part or mission maybe for us, is connecting people to farms and food, and sharing not just about food, but like land conservation and, climate change and pollinator habitat.
Just having people see how their food's produced. I mean, there's such a disconnect now. I think everyone's behind their screens, and it allows people to appreciate the labors that go into it and how much hard work it really is. And, hopefully that translates into how people consume and, even price of food. And there's constant, downward pressure on food pricing and all of that. And, when people understand what it takes to grow food, there's less resistance to that, I would say. But yeah, I think that's like, we always see it as like the kind of the gateway to hopefully eating, you're like shaping generations on like they've picked berries as a kid. And I notice like taste and flavor has always been really important to us. And, that's something that's so apparent in a fresh berry, where and variety by variety has its own flavor and characteristics, but also just the freshness where they have that. And then, have something that's, been grown in Chile or wherever and shipped here, and it's, looks beautiful, but it doesn't have any flavor. And so we've noticed that people really, and kids notice that too. They're like, no, I'll only eat, Adam's berries or whatever, his blueberries or his strawberries. And that's great. That's what you hope. And you hope that starts to translate over like, wow, these carrots or Digger's carrots are amazing, or, whatever it is. And they just noticing flavor.
Grocery store carrots are not very good. Yeah. But farm carrot, all day long.
Yeah, exactly. So, so it's a great introduction that way. And it just provides this like kind of, for lack of better words, like a wholesome thing to do with your friends and families out here. That's, that it's nice to provide the space for it, I would say. Yeah.
Well, what are you excited about in your next year of farming life?
I feel like we talked about this the other day and now I can't remember.
So there's a number of things that I'm excited about. I guess so when I started, I loved strawberries, and like I was really excited about the strawberry production. And then I kind of fell like out of love with strawberries for a period, and, for various reasons. And then it was like raspberries for a period, and then blueberries really have come in strong, and I do truly love the blueberries. So I get excited for blueberry season every year, and just as like varieties come on and learning their characteristics. That's always exciting for me, and just like the sheer abundance of food. Like that's one of our goals, is really just to give people a choice in Vermont, and, like for a local organic. But yeah, but then so there's the blueberries, which I'm always kind of excited about, but the day neutral strawberries have kind of helped me fall back in love with strawberries, which is interesting. And some of it's just the new challenge. I tried growing them a couple times. And I remember saying to Jess, like, don't let me ever plant these again. Like I kept on.
It's like you have one more year.
Yeah. And I'm like, I just, I couldn't figure out, like they're hungry. Like they need nutrient wise, they need a lot. And, hungry and thirsty basically. And they require a lot of hand holding, and they weren't fitting into our systems initially. And I think I also someone that like I need to do something on a certain scale to really focus on it too. I need to like plunge and have some like meat in the game almost, where I'm like, okay, like I've got to figure that out. Like,
well, right. You've got markets, you've got customers asking for it. You can't just dabble.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to do it, you have to have a product to offer.
Yeah. I think we also plan in them like, oh, we can grow June strawberries. We can certainly grow, day neutral strawberries, but realizing, it's a completely different
whole different crop.
It's like, yeah, I wouldn't even consider it like
the management's
close
completely
to
different. Yeah, it's just completely different management. So it took some time to get to know that, and I couldn't figure it out on like 5 200-foot rows for some reason. That wasn't like enough to
convince you to pay attention to them.
Keep me interested. I was like, oh, these things just kind of sit here and like they're not really fruiting much, and they it's the June strawberries come on with like this heavy flush, and it's just like the fruit pours on, and you can't ignore them. Whereas the day neutrals initially kind of trickle on, and they're flowering and fruiting, and they're like, oh, there's a red one out there, and then it builds as the season progresses. The production builds, the flavor builds, everything. But I think once I kind of stuck with it and was like, I'm going to figure this out this year, and I had a good year, I kind of got hooked on it again. And it was just exciting to have something different in the fall. And, it's kind of, we harvest them from like, August to, November. So it's a long season, and people are shocked still. They're like, how do you have berries now? Or why, they're just shocked by it all.
It's like a magic trick.
Yeah.
No, so it's like this new
novelty.
We spend all this time, educating people on when the seasons of different berries are. And
right, your whole logo is a calendar.
Yeah, it took forever just to get people to, recognize that we had raspberries in the fall. And then they introduced this, just threw people off. But at the same time, we had... we had the wholesale market there. We don't do pick your own with them or anything like that. But as far as the farm stand and farmers market, it's been
it keeps people coming.
An attraction. Yeah, it keeps people coming in.
And the market.
Yeah,
in a different way.
Yeah, I would say the strawberries pull people in more. And then obviously it helps with like at farmers market. They're like, okay, we'll get whatever 2 raspberries, 2 strawberries, or something. So helps just with overall sales that way. But so I guess that's what I'm kind of excited about. Probably blueberries more than anything. That's really what gets me going right now. But yeah, day neutrals. It's kind of an annual challenge of like getting the nutrients right and getting the water. Just the timing of cutting runners, and so that there's all these steps that. We've started to really dial in, and I think it's every year they seem to improve, and so so I'm excited to see it through, I guess. What about you, Jess?
Me, I'm excited to try and play around with strawberries a little, just sort of extending. Can we have them earlier in the season before June, and then. Can we close that gap between the summer and the fall strawberries to have a smaller gap in our season where we go without strawberries? So can we have them close to, May through fall? So we talked about playing around with that a little bit. I'm excited about blueberry season, I think, and having people at the farm, having childcare. I think I'm excited. I'm excited about. And I'm excited to see how fast I can harvest a tote of blueberries. I like to time.
Super competitive one.
I like to time myself on different tasks.
It's a daily marathon.
To see how fast I can go.
That's right. You're a runner too, aren't you?
Yeah.
Go.
But I've realized not everyone is competitive, so I try just to compete with myself now.
So what's a metric?
The fastest I have gotten is 16 minutes a hip bucket. So that's my goal.
That's
the farm record.
It's about 8 pounds. So
8 pounds, yeah.
Nice.
So, yeah, I'm just it's always exciting to open up the farm to people. Yeah.
Yeah.
July seems when we have everything under control. June is sort of just like a cluster of trying to figure out what's happening. And then I feel like by July we have a rhythm, and then it just feels nice to open up the farm to people.
I think that was one of the challenges with even pick your own strawberries in the past, where it's like June is, we have obviously the June strawberries fruiting. And so there's that just intensity of that harvest where it's the 25-day just intense go. Same time, everything's waking up and like everything's growing rapidly and weeds are growing rapidly and you're trying to like make sure everything's fertilized adequately and, staying on top of whatever irrigation, whatever it might be. But it's just, I guess the farm always feels hectic in June. And so to integrate Pick Your Own in, it's just another layer where it becomes like customers always around and they're always, it's wonderful, but like grabbing you to talk and you want to take time to talk to people too. And, and it's part of the fun, part of the joy, but feeling like, we needed to get everything else set in motion before we could really open up on a, public level beyond just the farm stand being open.
A lot of people come to talk to Adam at Pick Your Own. So he gets pulled out in the fields a lot.
Yeah. I mean, and I
got to know you're a farmer.
I love it. And I love it. But I also love when Pick Your Own closes, too, because I'm like, all these projects, I'm like, I can get this done uninterrupted. And, it's a good, it's like people that have been supporting me for a really long time and like believed in kind of what we've done. And that's
why they continue to come here.
Yeah. But it's wonderful. Like to have that and like that customer connection, but at the same time, it's, you get to that point where you're just like, okay, just like, I want to go down to the day neutral field and see what's going on. Or I want to, like be able to like do field work or something like that. And, we all have our daily lists that we're trying to check off, and it's harder during the Pick Your Own season to actually check off those lists in completion. And gotten much better at delegating and all of those things with time, so things still happen.
Do you think plasticulture berries would work well for Pick Your Own or ever bearing for Pick Your Own, or not really, because you need that big flush in June to like really feel abundant?
We noticed that our Pick Your Own traffic dies when Pick Your Own apples come on. So even with fall raspberries, they switch to fall mode, and still I feel like people are confused. Wait, Pick Your Own strawberries in fall. So we've done a few pop-up Pick Your Own fall strawberries, which was really popular. That worked really well, but I don't know if we could do it on a consistent every weekend.
Even the way we'd thought about like, could you do this just on weekends, or one day a week or something like that? Because the way that the day neutrals in particular, how they are ripening, you're not out there every day harvesting them. It's every, 3 days or something like that. So you kind of let them ripen, so you could time it well for a Pick Your Own, for weekends, or flip-flop fields and things like that. But yeah, there is a mental shift that happens in fall where it's squash, pumpkin, and apple season all of a sudden. As far as the plastic culture side of things, for June's, yes, fully could do strawberries on plastic culture for June's. It becomes like some growers, when I talk to people about it, they say like, I don't think my customers like it because they like the look of the field or something of matted row. Mm-hmm. But then, when even with June's, we've done occasional pop-ups where, it's been really hot and we haven't been able to maintain crop, and we're like, okay, we're just going to like open up for the weekend and like do this random Pick Your Own for the weekend. And people love it because they're like, I can see the fruit. The fruit's clean, the quality's there, so, there's something to say for plasticulture, and it's, raised bed, the fruit's very visible, it's not sitting in the dirt. And so the fruit's more or less beautiful that comes off of it, other than when it bakes on the plastic and things like that and melts. And, there's that side of it. But yeah, so, I mean, I guess I see a mix of farms, obviously the matted row is more traditional, but for us, the earliness of plasticulture, the fruit quality of kind of the clean, dry fruit was really important. And then just maintenance, weeding, we like not wanting to be out there hoeing nonstop and all that. It's easier to motivate a crew to cut runners than it is to weed strawberries any day.
Yep. Yeah, that was my assumption, not doing that yet. you said you use low tunnels a lot for your day neutrals, or are you doing them for the Junes as well?
Just our day neutrals.
Yep.
Just day neutrals, and that's really to extend the season. It's, I think some of it's where we live. I mean, we're practically on the Canadian border, and it's a shorter season. We can't get the plants in the ground as early as maybe other areas. So it condenses it even more, and kind of the later you plant, the less yield, the reduced yields you'll have. And so the low tunnels, it's like growing anything undercover. It's just a little more protected. The plants are a little bit healthier, a little more vibrant. It gives us the chance to start manipulating the sides and closing them and creating a little more warmth. And then, on rainy periods or cold periods, just shutting them down completely. And so it allows us to really stretch out the season. And we could probably go further, honestly, than we have. I mean, this year we I forget what the date was, but we finally had a hard freeze. I think it was like the 8th of November or something like that. And that was, green fruit, everything froze. It didn't matter. But having said that, we have giant, 60 by 200 foot pieces of rime. We sometimes talk about like, oh, do you take a section and, even on those under the low tunnels, drape over a big chunk of rime and really stretch it out that way.
Yeah.
But having said that, you're also, by then kind of you're kind of done.
You're done.
Our crew leaves in about 10 days. Do we want to stretch out the harvest?
There's been years when our crew's wrapped up and there's still fruit out there, and we're like, oh, we'll harvest it, and then we just go down there and graze, and it never happens. Really, you're done.
Switching over to brambles, you grow them both in tunnels and out in the field. Would you lean towards one over the other?
For wholesale tunnels, all the way, fruit quality yields is above and beyond than what comes out of the field. For pick your own, the tunnels get really hot in the summer. So, if you have a 70 or 80 degree day, it's like 100 and something in the tunnels. So for families, it's not.
We would do mornings. So there's one variety that we did morning pick your owns in for a little bit. We didn't do it last year at all, actually.
And I think it goes back a little to, like feel and nostalgia, like, oh, we're in the fields picking raspberries. We're not in a tunnel picking raspberries. And so some customers have really come to appreciate the quality of the summer raspberries in the tunnels. They're all beautiful. You don't really have to look what you're picking. You don't have to inspect the berries. But a lot of people, it's too hot in the tunnels. And do we really want to have our prime berries for pick your own be tunnel berries, where, pick your own customers will sometimes pick anything. So to have them take our tunnel berries, which are, our primo berries, it doesn't make as much financial sense.
So you think that pick your own is almost less fussy in...
Oh, yeah. I see people come back with like white berries. They're like, wow, look at these beautiful berries. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, one, those aren't ripe.
You can't say
try
that. They're happy about it.
Yeah.
So it's the funny thing,
that's
though.
what they want.
Yeah. If I tried to sell, a pint that had berries like that in it, they'd be like, never, ever would they consider buying it. But if they pick it themselves, they're happy with white berries, orange berries. So yeah, I think they're less fussy when they pick their own.
But the tunnels, there's no comparison really. It's all. I was saying it outside, but it's a different product. And there's the tunnels. The benefits, the yields go up drastically. I mean, it's at least like 30% more. And so, in a field, you maybe have like 65% marketable fruit, whereas in the tunnels, it's like, high 90s. It's pretty much, if it grows there, you can pick it and harvest it. So there's the increased yields. There's
longer shelf life.
The raspberries are notorious for a short shelf life. And so you go from maybe like field is, if you're lucky, you're getting like 2 or 3 days versus, you're getting, it basically doubles, it's like,
Why do you think the shelf life's that much better?
Moisture.
Its fruit stays dry. Yeah, that's the big thing. And that's even out west, where, it is dry and arid climates, they're still growing them in tunnels out there. And it's just, it's a whole different product really that comes out of there. And then obviously like tunnels, there's like, it's a focused area. So it's like pest and disease outbreaks you can manage.
Are you screening?
So
the fall ones.
Falls we screen for SWD.
We don't see the pressure for the summer ones to worry about it.
We don't worry about SWD on summer raspberries, even like blueberries that much. Like people freak out about it, but like timing wise, it comes on later, so it's you can usually outrun most of the. You don't for fall like raspberries or anything. They love the raspberries, but just the timing of when everything's fruiting, you usually are outrunning SWD, the majority of it.
And you're being very diligent about a clean pick. Too,
yeah.
Which I think is key.
Clean pick is, yes.
Probably almost
huge. We go through our tunnels every other day, pick clean. And then, it gets, either refrigerated or with raspberries, my goal is to get rid of them right away. It's like I want them like in the van and in someone's belly that night, type of thing.
Our crew's gotten really good at the clean harvest where, any soft berries, infected berries are going into like a bucket on their back and they're picking every ripe berry. So it's helped keep SWD pressure down significantly.
Yeah. So, I think, I guess the other big thing on the tunnels that because we're so wholesale oriented, the tunnels allow us to harvest every day. Whereas if you have a rainy period, you can't harvest raspberries in the rain. They will just melt in the pint or the half pint, and you'll be delivering mush basically. You can pick them, you can freeze them maybe, but even the frozen quality is not there. Raspberries have to be harvested dry for any sort of quality in the marketplace, and so the tunnels allow us to do that, where we can pick any day. Really, it's not hindered on weather at all, and that's a big as far as like tying back to like consistency in the marketplace. And I know whatever city market is going to want X amount of flats every other day type of thing, and so we can meet those orders and demands. And I have other standing orders with restaurants, 2 days a week or whatever, where it doesn't, the weather, and I guess this all is kind of tied back to like trying to adopt climate change as much as possible, but it's the weather. Our goal is to try to minimize kind of the impact of the erratic weather on our crops and business, and either by protecting it, from the moisture or having enough moisture to add, whatever it might be, or, you're kind of, it's either, it seems to be all water related, but, water and heat. But anyway, that's been a big one for us. So it's allowed us to build up, a market because we're there, we have the product.
Do you have any high tunnel berries, raspberries for pick your own, or are they only in the field?
We open up one house, and that's because we're not completely thrilled with that variety for wholesale.
It's great flavor.
The berries a bit too orange for wholesale markets, and the fruit's softer.
It's a softer fruit. It's an older variety.
So
Killarney is the variety. It's a great, like, as far as the flavor on it, I love it, and customers love it too. And so we didn't open it up this year, but because our crew was able to manage the harvest, honestly, and
we had a lot of outside berries that needed to be picked.
Yep. And it was wet, and we couldn't get those. So, it was like during, the summer months when it was so wet here. So this year we didn't, and, most of it went either wholesale or there's a decent amount in the freezer that were, being bagged now and sold as frozen berries.
You were talking about how you can't get, pick your own is not very helpful if it's raining, but it seems like that would be an opportunity to, hey, you can pick your berries inside even though it's drizzly out.
Yeah,
that was.
So that's a, maybe not the picturesque in the field people are thinking of, but another opportunity.
When it comes to getting out of the house with kids, people are thrilled about it. They're like, yes,
something to do.
Something we can. We're not stuck in this rainy day.
While we're talking about high tunnels, you talked a little bit about it earlier. You've decided to invest in Harnoise versus all kinds of ones. What made you decide to go with Harnois, and are there any modifications you've made to them or things you would do differently?
We don't have to think about them in the winter. I think a lot for snow load.
That might be the number one.
That's probably number one.
I mean, honestly,
Durability gives you the peace of mind.
They're solid. I mean, they're first, their construction, and you don't have to plow next to them. You don't have to, it's like thinking about like labor maintenance, all of these things. It's like now with like windstorms, I've been thinking about them more, but you don't worry about them coming down at all. So they're NRCS tunnels, so that was, some decision making there as far as like offsetting costs and all of that.
Qualified, yeah.
Yeah.
I think if we had to do things differently in the raspberry houses, we would add venting on the end walls and maybe a fan system to help with the humidity.
Yeah, that's our weak link. Is our houses are pretty simple. We have, they're not greenhouses. We're not double wall or single wall poly. Kind of this lashing strap system similar to Caterpillar, and then roll up sides, which we either you can get them up 6 feet. It's it's a high roll up, so you can get a lot of air movement still, but they're long tunnels. They're 30 by 200 is what we have for tunnels. So yeah, increased air movement. More so in the fall is when you see it. In the summer, there's still like the air's moving pretty well, and some of that has to do with we have with the fall raspberries and netting. The netting cuts down the airflow, and we have the netting there. There's bees inside, so it's pretty it's tight that way.
They're at the bottom of the hill, so they're not getting some of that
moist. Kind of everything airflow kind of drains down towards where they are, so that we could use better airflow in our houses. And we just skinned a bunch of new houses this year, and I'm like, oh, why didn't we put in more vents and things like that? And it was like, oh, we could do this today.
That would have been the opportunity.
Yeah, this would have been the chance. But it was also like, we're not going to get this. It was like fall, and we were racing weather and crops, and it's like, okay, this morning we can do this house, and then we can harvest later on, and we can, it was, trying to just get everything done. And so, but that's, our houses need better ventilation. There's no other way to put it, and we manage them so that it's okay. It works for us, but it would be helpful, especially in the fall, as just as like the day length shifts, and there's more moisture in the air again.
Yeah, dews are heavier.
Yeah.
Oh, one question that popped in my head earlier. Do you do anything for frost protection on blueberries, or are they late enough it's generally all right? Or you're sweating?
Plant and pray. Yeah.
I think this year it was...
Oh, my gosh.
I remember 2 years. I remember like 2011 or 12. Maybe we had one of these late frosts. And this year, I think...
that was...
We did lose. Actually, we did lose.
No, we did. This year we lost probably 20% of
our crop.
Blossoms. And blueberries luckily can... their flowers are hardier than raspberries and strawberries. And so our strawberries, at first, that spring zap, we put on, we use like a Type R remay. So we put on one layer, and then at the last second, I had us put on a second layer, and I'm so glad we did. It was cold. Raspberries had not started, they were still pretty tight and hadn't really started blooming yet, so they were fine, and they were in the high tunnels. We closed down the high tunnels and all that, but and then blueberries were in pretty extensive bloom, and they can go down to about 20. It's like 27 roughly. So it's as far as a flower goes, it's great. But we were colder than that. So
I think we were 26 or 25.
Yeah, it just like the days after that freeze, and just walking around and just slowly watching everything turn, and it's like translucent and then brown and then drop, and you're just like terrified, honestly. And oddly, it was like certain varieties did better than others. It seems like there must be a little more tolerant, or location on the field. Top of our field was hit pretty hard. which was interesting because I would think the cold would have rolled down our hills. But top of the field was hit pretty hard, and we had definitely a reduced crop. But balanced out, I would say. What I shouldn't say it balanced out. Like we had reduced yields, but where it balanced out for us this year, it was that we had other fields that were coming into production. So what we lost during the frost was kind of balanced out, where we had new fields coming in that, certainly were thinned, and we had, good sized fruit this year because of kind of the thinning of blossoms and the amount of rain too. Really plumped everything up. But yeah, I think the other fields coming in made it so like our overall yields were pretty steady, but that was just dumb luck, honestly. I do know, like out in, Michigan and New Jersey, people are setting up more and more frost irrigation in their blueberries, and it wasn't something that people used to think about, but it's crosses your mind now. Definitely does.
Doesn't take too many cold nights to start thinking about that.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think, that erraticness of spring is becoming, our it seems like it's getting warmer earlier, or we have these periods of warm and dry early spring, which didn't used to be a thing. And then it's often like, I feel like April has been our warm and dry month. Mm-hmm. And then it kind of gets cooler and wetter during May, and then goes back, then finally goes into summer in June for us. So, I mean, that I would say it's been more erratic in spring than fall. Fall's just kind of slowly just stretched out for us. I feel like, where it's great. I mean, in some ways, as far as like production and, harvesting deep into the fall. Think of when I first started growing, it was like sometimes, mid-September frosts, and, definitely by, 1st of October or something like that. And, there's some years where we've been getting through October without a frost, and, or we have a light one mid-October or something like that. And then if you can protect your crops, you can still harvest for another couple of weeks. So, I mean, those are the positive parts of climate change.
Yeah. The falls have been nice to us lately.
Yeah. These extended falls have been great. And they've, if you've had for us, what we were growing too, or that, are ever-bearing. So the raspberries and the strawberries are continually flowering and fruiting. So, it really is added to the production and yields for us. And, if you've had a challenging, let's say, June strawberry season for, be it moisture or whatever it might be, it's balanced things out for us, I would say.
What does sustainable farming mean to you, and what are you doing to achieve it?
I guess we think of sustainable farming, like a lot of other people. One, what are we doing to protect our environment and our resources? What are we doing to ensure that we're being kind to ourselves in terms of, like, can we run the business for another 20, 30 plus years? Oh, and are we making money?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's the liability, of course.
Are we able to support our family of four off of the farm, and, provide a livable wage for the employees that work here?
Yeah, I would say it's pretty layered as far as what is sustainable farming. I mean, and 20 years ago probably would have had a different answer than I do now. And, there's certainly, like, being a perennial farmer is part of that for me, of just like, I love that we have a biologically active, soil, and, just the our hedgerows are intact, and it's like, we have a pretty, like, active ecosystem. Birds love what we do, it's healthy that way. And we're doing a lot, where we work with, like, UVM on pollination plantings and different pollination studies here. And, it's fascinating to see all of the, the native bees that are here, and to see that intact is really important to me. And, it's something that I truly believe in. But I think, there's that side of it. But then I think over time, personal crew sustainability is important. When I think about like, trying to make investments back in the farm every year, a lot of it has to do with like, how can we do this easier? How can we save our bodies? How can we, make this, a simpler task where it doesn't bog people down or something? If there's certain tasks that just seem to weigh on people, those are like the investments. I'm like, how do we just get that done and make it so that our crew is happy and that we can move on to the work that seems to excite people and sustain them as well. Because, obviously we're nothing without our crew. And then, on a personal level, I think, it ties in where, I think younger, you're more willing to sacrifice body, time, all of those things. Like, all of that's starting to catch up. And I think the time wasn't as big of a deal until we had kids. And then that was a huge shift as far as where you want your time. And, you want to be on the farm and you love the farm and that's like its own child to you. But like, you want to be with your family too. And, it's like more and more, I'm like, how do you carve out more time? And how do you make it so your kids don't resent the farm? And, they like, can they love it the same way you love it, and you want it to be positive for them. So that's really important to us, I would say.
Was there any big game-changing things that you did when you decided to have kids to free up time? Or was it a whole bunch of incremental little investments in tools and equipment and systems that kind of...
I don't think we've gotten there yet.
Yeah, I was just trying to fix it.
I think what feels like we have a lot of time together as a family is that our kids are on the farm. During the summer, they're on the farm. So even though, if they're not with us, or they're not with Adam, he can grab them to like help do tractor work or go on deliveries. So he gets time with them.
It's still family time.
They find me at lunch with the crew. And
it feels like family time, but I think at some point we will get to the period in life where they're like, well, why can't we take a summer vacation? Why can't you both come to my soccer game? Or, why is the farm really taking precedent over family? And I've worked on farms like that, and I've seen kids resent their parents and the farm for the time it takes away. So hopefully we'll get to the point in figuring that out before they start.
Yeah. I mean, everyone, lifelong goal for everyone is balance, I would say, but it's that's why it's a lifelong goal. It's a challenge. But I think we're trying to make it still fun for them. And that's, that's part of it it's a unique profession. The intensity and seasonality of the work is challenging. And you have a period where the business, because it's what sustains us and what we live off of, takes, it's like, no, I'm working tonight. I'm doing tractor work. I'm doing, whatever. It's dry right now and it's going to rain for 4 days. Like, this has to happen now. And that's really hard to explain to a family and hard to have any balance, honestly. It's like you can have the best plan in the world and try to implement it, but then, we have a weather-based, nature-based business that really dictates.
Right. You miss that day. Opportunity. It ruins your whole
Yeah. It's like, this has to happen. So, and you can't explain that to kids exactly at this point. And even, as a couple and everything, it's hard at times where, there's this, this beast that like is like moving forward, like it or not, and like it impacts it definitely impacts like our time, but then would I remind myself, that I try to remind myself that a lot of people leave at 7 a.m. and get back at 5 p.m. and they don't see their kids at all, and here I am, I have like a relationship with my kids and I see my partner and all these things, and that's great. And then there's also right now we're able to do a little vacation this winter all together. We skip school and go skiing sometimes. We do, like we're around. We can go to, soccer in the winter. We can, whatever it is. Like there's like you go from, I always say it's like you go from like super dad to like deadbeat dad at times it feels, but
you can give a little more family time in the winter.
Yeah, you're
the
present.
kids have a hard time in the spring.
The transition
all of a
is hard.
sudden, well,
Yeah,
right now I'm more I am the caretaker. So when Adam leaves in the spring to do the farm, they have a really tough time. It's a lot of tears in the beginning, and then
it's hard for everyone. I mean,
out.
Since having kids, I notice I push doing certain things. I'm like, oh, just like, because I know once you start, it grabs a hold of you and wanting, just wanting to like savor that time together. And, it's really, it's important to me. But yeah, so, I mean, we haven't, we foolishly haven't made drastic changes, I feel like. And some of that was like, we had kids, COVID happened, it's like where there's like lockdown and just like, it slowed some of the transition of figuring out how to balance, the farm and family life a little bit because of what was going on in the world. And now we're, and we're addressing it. And we also made conscious decisions, right or wrong, to like have one of us home with their kids just because of like cost of daycare and all these things that like are real, where you're like, oh, we're just gonna be working to pay for daycare type, but
I think I naively thought that I would be able to farm more with a kid on my back or something.
That doesn't work.
That doesn't work. One, our kids didn't like being in carriers. They didn't, they didn't like bottles, so no one else could take care of them. If they were in a carrier, they don't want to be tipped over. So, they have to eat every 2 hours. They can't be in the sun, which I knew none of that. So I think I was more shocked by how much care they needed.
Kids need care.
I was like, I don't know if that's how it's going to be, Jess. I'm like, yeah, it'll be fine.
Yeah, reality hit pretty quickly, I think.
But that being said, they're in the fields with us a fair amount of the time.
Yeah,
helping.
Like Wilder, our oldest, loves to go out and be with our crew and harvest berries with them. And
once they're mobile on their own,
it's
a little easier.
And they like what's wonderful is they have like a relationship with our crew and feel like connected to other adults out there, and that's great for them to have that connection. And like there's other people that they kind of grow to trust and like have little jokes with, and it's fun to see that side of it. So
sometimes they're off. I don't know where they are, but I'm like,
we have feral children, which is
they're
great.
Somewhere. Someone's watching them.
They're in eyesight.
It's been 2 hours, but they're okay, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of, there's a lot of eyes on them, which is good, and a lot of eyes that are like nurturing them too. Which is just great.
Right. Jess, what is your farming background? How'd you get into it?
My high school job was on a farm, so it was a farm down the road, not too far from us. I started there when I was 14. I did a lot of like the bedding and the nursery sales, and then I did a lot of like the landscape, taking care of all the seedlings and the perennials, and would be in the fields occasionally. It was primarily like an H2A crew for that farm. So, we'd go in the fields when, there was a huge like bumper crop. And then I'd work in the farm stand there. So I did that all through high school. And then I went to college at UVM. After that, my involvement with the farm and food world was I was the produce buyer at Healthy Living. That's how we ran into each other. I went to grad school, worked on various farms while I was in grad school. Came back. I worked at the Intervale, managing their gleaning and food rescue program. So I always knew that I had wanted farming in my life, and I think I had personal aspirations to own a farm before meeting Adam. And then after grad school, my goal was to work with a program like the farmer training program. And I think we realized, well, it doesn't make sense for both of us to be managing farms. We'll never see each other. We'd never be able to have a family. And I think that's maybe when we decided to farm together. I don't really know. just sort of happened. Sort of happened. But I was before we decided to join together, I was at the Intervale Center managing their cleaning and food rescue program.
And you were teaching up at UVM.
I was teaching at UVM.
Vermont food systems class and dabbling at other farms.
Yeah,
well.
I've done a lot in the food system. Waitressing, cooking, farming, education. So, yeah.
All important stuff.
All important stuff.
Yeah, I think you knew early on that you wanted to be probably connected to farms and food, for like early on in life, I think it was a later, I don't want to say a later discovery for me, but yeah, I think in some ways it was like I hiked after college, hiked the Appalachian Trail and had a lot of time. Like it's this luxury of time to think, it's like it's a rare, it's a rarity to have this 6-month chunk of time where you're in your head and really like, old memories, whatever it might be, are like coming up, but it's also, it was this major transitional period of my life. And, I kind of came out of it where I just like really wanted to believe in what I was doing. And I didn't have my parents had sheep and a garden and, like some basic things, but like wasn't a farm. It was, gentleman's farm. And I just knew that I was like, I need to do work that I like truly believe in. I can't just whatever, be a cog. And I thought I wanted to teach. And then I just like felt like first of all, I felt like I couldn't take care of myself in some ways. Was like, what am I teaching people for? But I also, with that, I had exposure working 2 different places in Vermont where I was doing like outdoor and environmental education, and at places that had farms as an educational component. And I found I was really drawn to that. And it was a new discovery for me. It wasn't like I'd always like food growing up was really important. Come from like long line of like passionate cooks and like, gardeners and all of that really like, food has always been like the center. But yeah, I am certainly like first generational farmer, like didn't expect that this was like the path that I was going to be on. It was more, discovering it and falling in love with it and realizing like, well, that I was really drawn to it. And then, drawn to it was really perennials that pulled me in, interestingly.
And I think I don't know, I think if we were together and I didn't want to be a farmer, I think it'd be very challenging to be a partner with a farmer. I don't know. That's just, always being like.
That's what I hear on your podcast.
Always being like, no, I can't do that. I have to, go out and disc tonight. Or I think it'd be really hard.
Yeah, you don't understand.
You have the buy-in and the understanding.
Yeah, I have the buy-in and the understand. Like, okay, I get it. Like, one of us has to be out there. One of us has to be with the kids and whatever. It's just, it's 8 months out of the year, 10 months out of the year. And the other 2, we have a lot of family time. So, I feel like maybe if I wasn't interested in farming, it would be harder to be with a farmer.
Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your beginning self or a new beginning farmer now?
I always say have a plan. I mean, it's like, I know it seems so basic, but like, and there's, layers to that, but like I watch a lot of people, like work with like the farmer training program and other things like that. And it's like, everybody's going to start a
diversified
veggie CSA
1 acre,
sell to the co-op, and like there's obviously a lot of ways to do things and everything, but I think coming up with a clear idea, clear business plan, having a sense of how to run a business. I mean, that's something that like so many people.
Business education.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that like there's a lot of people that are
Classes.
Good growers, but they don't know how to market things or don't have a market, and they're just like planting, and then they're trying to get in, and they don't understand their business, so they're undercutting themselves or undercutting other growers, and I think that's something that's not stressed enough. Where like farming, restaurants, all these things. It's like a lot of hours, tight margins. You really need to know your costs, know what you're doing, and have a clear avenue for where that product is going to. If it's not going, what are you going to do there? Where are you going to send it? You know, can you preserve it in any way? Can you create a value-added product? Whatever it might be. And I think it's the only profession where I see people just like haphazardly just be like, I'm going to start a farm and like do this without any planning. Whereas I'm like, what other profession would you be like, I'm going to, you know, become a doctor and start operating on people,
not a lot of
you know,
other
or like, you
industries.
know, like whatever. And it's like, I'm like, why is that? Like, why is it okay? And I think it's, you know, I don't know if that's like stigmas around, like people think like, you know, farmers are not like intelligent or whatever, but it's like farmers are some of the brightest people I know out there, where they're having to, you know, they're jack of all trades. They are constantly adjusting to the day's environment and tasks. You know, you have to be an accountant, you have to be
everything.
bookkeeper, exactly, you know, that is like marketer, whatever it might be. So I always tell people that, like, take the time, work on other farms, make mistakes from other people. You know, if you have a chance to be somewhere like the Intervale, it's great, or lease land for, especially if you're not growing perennials, like do that. Make sure you really want to do it, because you don't know right away. It's one thing to work for someone. It's another thing to grow food for, you know, have your own operation for a couple of years and really get to know the lifestyle and what it's truly about. And I think that's where somewhere like the Intervale was really positive, where I watched growers come in and realize, like, this is great, but not for me. And they learned that without having to invest. You know, they didn't drop a couple $100,000 on land and equipment and all these things, and were able to pivot and hopefully, you know, are doing meaningful work that, you know, that helped kind of, it's part of the process of, you know, where they are now. But I think that's, I always say, gain as much experience as you can, and then have a plan, and then, you know, try to execute the plan as, you know, as well as you can. But, you know, obviously that changes. Have a plan, but be flexible.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I would echo, you know, work on a lot of different farms and feel what scale, what business model works well for you. You know, I think for a long time before meeting Adam, I was like, I want a CSA, and quickly realized that I'm not the person to have a CSA. Like, the interaction and relationships with people is not something I'm particularly good at. And then figuring out scale, like small scale farms are really, I found to be really challenging for me, whereas like large scale, fast paced farms is where I thrived. And then also, if you do want to start your farm, think about what you want in your life and fit your farm in around that, instead of starting your farm and then try to fit your life into your farm. Like, if you know you want the winters free, then figure out a business model that works with that. If you know that you don't have childcare in the summer, figure out, you know, how to go heavy on, you know, roots or winter greens. You know, if you know you need the month of July off because your family goes to whatever, Cape Cod for the month, like, figure out a business model that still allows you to do those things that are important to you to feed the other parts of self. And I think, you know, as a perennial farmer, I think we're trying to, because you know, we have less control over, you know, when we can have our crop and when we don't have crop. You know, I think we're trying to figure out how can we, you know, mold the business to work with our family, since we can't be like, oh, we're just going to do winter greens and have our summers free. So what else can we shift to sort of meet, you know, halfway?
What do you do outside of farming that brings you joy or de-stress? Do you have things? I mean, a family, I imagine, is a large part of that answer, but is there any other hobbies or anything in particular?
Certainly my kids.
Adam likes to drink coffee.
I do like that.
Drink coffee and read.
Yeah, I do like to drink coffee and read. That is a joy.
That sounds like a way to spark new ideas, though.
Yeah. Sometimes it's a rabbit hole.
Don't spill his coffee. You're instantly fired from the crew.
Yeah, I think that's in our employee manual.
We had one employee, it was their first day, and they spilled Adam's coffee, and Adam came in and was like, we have a real problem. I was like,
Off to a bad start.
You're off to a bad start.
I don't think this is going to work out.
Play.
I mean, like our kids, for me, like bring utter joy and like love and, warmth in life. And there's no greater pleasure. But, beyond that, it's like, things have shifted. I would say it used to be, time used to be spent more like being in the mountains and biking and, doing things like that. Now I'm lucky if we get down to the lake and go for a swim and, stare at the ducks and skip some rocks and, go get a sandwich on the way home. It feels like, and that's, the expectations of what we can accomplish now are, simplified. But I mean, there's things like it's, like I was saying earlier, touched just like we've been teaching our kids to ski this winter, and it's great to like, it's something we can do all together. And it's, you're outside, that's wonderful. I mean, it's like that. So that's been great. Winter around here for me, like I love to walk around the farm. I love to walk into the woods here and, just listen and bird watch and, just kind of be in my head a little bit. And that's, that brings, certain joy. And then, and then attempt to get healthy again. I feel like you, physically, like you kind of fall apart all winter or all summer in season. And then it's like more and more, it's like harder to recover. And so trying to just like take care of yourself a little bit. And, that's, I don't know if that's a joy or if that's just a need.
Yeah, that's what you like to do in your free time.
Yeah, I know. That's kind of what, what happens though. It's like trying to take care of yourself a little bit, but a lot of it's just, I feel like with the younger kids, life is pretty basic right now as far as like what happens for me.
I like to run. Adam doesn't like to partake.
Once a year. I get to the end of the road.
Yeah.
If I'm not moving, then I go a little bonkers. So my free time is still moving, where I think Adam likes to stop in his free time. And so we're trying to find where we can meet with that. I think bringing bike rides back into our time together is a goal for this season.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, it is different. Like my days during the summer, like start running and basically until the end. And so like in downtime, I crave like stillness in a funny way, where it's like there's, I mean, and I can't necessarily turn off at home during the season, especially. So if like we need a day off, like we try to do like Sundays off as a family day or a personal day or whatever. And so it's like we go somewhere, like we go to the river or we go, whatever it is, in some sort of an adventure. And that's like,
Can be low key, just off the property.
Just off the farm.
just leave the property. That's all that needs to happen.
Otherwise it turns into another work day.
Yeah. I'll go over to the barn and be like, I'm just going to go grab something. And, 3 hours later, well, this person, I ran into this person and like, and then whatever.
Started puttering on this.
Yeah, Hector had a question about this. And, so it's, I just get sucked right into it. So best to leave. And most enjoyable too, River, creamies. What else do you need?
We covered a lot of ground. Those were the basis of my questions. Is there anything else that you wanted to share that we didn't discuss?
I think if I were to describe us, I would incorporate more of the social component of what we do in terms of like, getting people onto the farm, the events on the farm, the relationships with customers, in addition to the whole-scale production-oriented farm. Even though like the pick your own and like all the social components and events is like, probably 10% of our business but I feel like that's what a lot of people know us for. They don't realize that we have like 13, 14 acres of blueberries and are really hustling and getting a lot of fruit into the community. So I think I would highlight some of that if I were to describe us.
If people want to find or follow your farm or reach out, how can they do that?
We have a website and we do have a minimal amount of presence on Instagram. So adamsberryfarm.com and Adams Berry Farm.
Adams Berry
is
Farm.
our
Yeah, Instagram and Facebook. Yeah, we have waves of activity. So word of mouth has always been very important to us.
There you go. And that was the Farmer's Share. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Adam and Jess of Adams Berry Farm. They're on Facebook and Instagram, as well as their website, adamsberryfarm.com. The Farmer's Share is supported by a grant offered by the USDA Specialty Crop Block Program from the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food, and Markets. This funding helps to cover some of my time and travel in order to produce these podcasts for the next 2.5 years. The USDA Agricultural Marketing Service supports projects that address the needs of U.S. specialty crop growers and strengthens local and regional food systems. I have no doubt that this podcast will meet those needs and help educate growers to support the industry. This show also is supported by the Ag Engineering Program of the University of Vermont Extension. If you enjoy this show and want to help support its programming, you can make a one-time or reoccurring donation on our website by visiting thefarmershare.com/support. We also receive funding from the Vermont Vegetable and Berry Growers Association. The VVBGA is a nonprofit organization funded in 1976 to promote the economic, environmental, and social sustainability of vegetable and berry farming in Vermont. Their membership includes over 400 farms across Vermont and beyond, as well as about 50 businesses and organizations that provide products and services of all types to their members. Benefits to members include access to the VVBGA listserv to buy, sell plants and equipment, share farming information, and tap the vast experience of our growers. Access the Community Accreditation for Produce Safety, also known as CAPS. This program is designed for growers, by growers, to help you easily meet market and regulatory food safety expectations. You can access the VVBGA's Soil Health Platform, where you can organize all the soil tests and create and store your soil amendment plans and records. Access to webinars for growers in the VVBGA annual meeting. An email subscription to the Vermont Vegetable and Berry newsletter. Camaraderie, enhanced communication, and fellowship among commercial growers. Memberships are on a per farm, per calendar year basis, and annual dues this year are $80. These funds pay for the organization's operating costs and support educational programs and research projects. These funds also support projects that address grower needs around ag engineering, high tunnel production, pest management, pollinators, produce safety, and soil health. Become a member today to be a part of and further support the veg and berry industry. You can visit thefarmershare.com to listen to previous interviews or see photos, videos, or links discussed from the conversation. If you don't want to miss the next episode, enter your email address on our website and you'll get a note in your inbox when the next one comes out. The Farmer's Share has a YouTube channel with videos from several of the farm visits. We're also on Instagram, and that's where you can be reminded about the latest episode or see photos from the visit. Lastly, if you're enjoying the show, I'd love it if you could write a review. In Apple Podcasts, just click on the show, scroll down to the bottom, and there you can leave 5 stars and a comment to help encourage new listeners to tune in. I'd also encourage you to share this episode with other grower friends or crew who you think would be inspiring for them. Thanks for listening.